Hello, welcome. Come in, please.
Hello. Hello, we are the Donalds, Gavin and Dell. Welcome to our home. We've been coming to Castle Hill Church for 35 years. We started coming when our boys were just in their early teens, so they went through Pathfinders at Castle Hill. And we've enjoyed it very much, and we'll be very keen to get back there when this COVID crisis is over.
Would you like us to show you around the house? Let's go.
And for the benefit of our pastor, who loves putting beautiful photos of Patagonia on Facebook, I would like to point out this one. It's Mount Fitzroy in Patagonia. Unfortunately, it's not in Chile, it's in Argentina, but Chile has some beautiful mountain scenery as well. Our kitchen, our family room. This is where we do most of our living, in this area. And this is where we watch church on the Sabbath. And this is where our grandchildren spend a lot of their time when they're here.
Come in here, I'll show you my hobby, which is photo booking. Since I retired about 6 years ago, I've probably done 25 or 30 photo books. And this one on the desk is the most recent, apart from our son's 50 years. We went to Jordan and Israel last year, and I've got this book on the screen as well. This is Jordan at the front, and it's the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Now that's on Mount Moriah. You might remember that Abraham took his son Isaac on God's instruction to Mount Moriah. In the museum in the I think it's the Tower of David, isn't it? They've got a museum, and this is the time of the city of David, and this is Mount Moriah. That's where the Dome of the Rock is, and the temple was, Herod's temple. And I thought this was fascinating because where the temple was, where Abraham took Isaac to be sacrificed, but God supplied a lamb. This is exactly the mountain where Christ also met his death on the cross. And I just thought that was a fascinating exhibit.
These are some of our family photos. Brett and Debbie, Jesse and Max, when Max was only 4 weeks old. Jesse is 3 in this one. And later on we had Max in this one over here, aged 4.
And this is my mother, and Brett and Mark, Dell of course, and these are Dell's parents down below. This is where we have lunch on a winter day, sitting in the sunshine with our backs to the sun by the pool, and sometimes we'll have lunch in the courtyard if the conditions are different. But we'll go through to the garage and see what's in there. Now, we came here 12 years ago to this house, and Brett noticed we had a spare garage space, so he brought his train table around that he'd started building before he got married. Then he didn't have anywhere to set it up, so I had to finish it off, and it became my hobby while the grandchildren were small. They've done work on it since, so it's grown like topsy. But because I'm a bridge and road engineer, or I was, there are lots of bridges and roads.
Since the lockdown eased 3 weeks ago, we decided to restart our discussion group, our Sabbath school group. So we have been doing it in different homes, 3 different homes. It'll be here again this week. And so we scatter around this room for our discussion. And then those that want to can move into the next room to watch church on the television.
And then we've been having a potluck lunch to finish off. Goes all day.
So thank you for visiting us, and we hope to see you all at church again in the near future.
We look forward to it. Bye.
Bye.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jess.
And this is Jess.
And we would like to welcome you this morning. We have a very special preacher today. He's Paul, and he normally serves behind the scenes, but today he's standing up the front and preaching to us.
So, as many of you are probably aware from my many posts on our Facebook group, I learned a lot from the Growing Younger conference that a few of us went to as a team. One of the things that really stood out to me from that conference was that when we invest in the young people and the young families in our church, that it's not just the youth that grow, it's actually the whole church that grows together. And I think that's really exciting. I think we're really blessed to be part of a church that invests in the young people. And speaking of investing in young people, we are having our first combined youth social again. The sheriffs have opened up their home in Bowen Mountain so that the youth can go up there and watch church together next week and enjoy some good food. And I'm promised there will be a fire to keep you all warm and toasty. So please register with me if you are interested in going, because we do need to stay under the 20-person limit. So send in your interest as soon as possible, and we're looking forward to hanging out as a group together. We hope that you enjoy the program and enjoy Paul's message.
Good morning, church. It's nice to see you all. Pastor Nick and I are here to just share some information with you. As you can tell, it's cold. Love your jacket, Nick.
Thanks. It's freezing in here today.
And the
Very
new
cold.
hairstyle.
Yeah, bit of something new. Why not? It's going to be school holiday soon, so.
At our last board meeting, we decided as a leadership team to continue with church life as it is. We've had many people ask us, what's happening? When are we getting back together? What's going to happen? When can we start Sabbath school? We decided that church will continue as is until our next board meeting in July 21.
That's right. And when it comes to small groups, Sabbath schools, Bible studies and so on, we decided in our board meeting not to have any of those running at church. So if you're planning in the next month or so to try and come in with a group and meet here, we've decided not to have that happen. But we aren't, the board didn't advise against meeting in people's homes. So we've been meeting with our Bible study groups and small groups in other people's homes around. That was the decision that we voted on. So, yeah.
In June, the limit for people to meet in a church setting has been 50. We're now in July and the limit is 100. That still does not suit us as a church, because with the 4 square metre rule, we can only fit around about 65, 66 people in the church. When it comes to Sabbath school, because of the size of the rooms and the 4 square metre rule, we can only fit about 10 in each Sabbath school room. That will not help us either, because if we decide to do Sabbath school and we have more than 10 turn up per room, then we have to start excluding people, and it's something that we don't want to do.
Yeah, that's right. This weekend for Pathfinders, we won't be meeting here at church and having a normal meeting. We'll actually be meeting outdoors. Everyone's going to be dropped off by their parents, and we'll be going on a hike together and then being picked up by our parents, or our Pathfinders will be picked up by their parents. So it should be an awesome weekend. I'm looking forward to getting out in nature again.
Our next board meeting is on July 21, where we'll be discussing a whole lot of issues and questions, and by then the government may have changed the restrictions, maybe to a 2 square metre rule or something like that, and then we can make some wise decisions for church life. But just let me reiterate that we won't be meeting as a church until we can meet together as one group. We did look at different options of meeting, maybe having 100 one week and then a different group the next week and so on, but we realised that it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't suit our congregation.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why we decided that was because, first of all, we have more than 200 people attending on a weekend basis, so then that means 3 services, and also it wouldn't be the same as what we remember church being like. We wouldn't be able to stay close together and mingle like we used to. We wouldn't be able to sing at the moment. So given that, we decided against it. Next coming weeks, we have 4 great speakers. Today, Paul Duncan, what an awesome young man, speaking today and teaching us about God and the intricate wonders of his creation.
I'm really looking forward to hearing Paul.
Me too.
Yeah.
He's a good guy. And last week, Sarah, thank you so much for speaking. I was really proud of you, and I think what a great message. It's still hanging around with me now. I want to have a mindset of abundance, not a mindset of scarcity. And I want to trust God more with everything that we own and our resources. After that, next week, we've got Kelvin Davis coming to speak. Kelvin, we're really looking forward to hearing from you. And Dr. Lachlan Rogers is speaking in the week after that. What a great guy. I'm looking forward to hearing from you as well, Lachlan. And Pastor Pablo will be speaking to close off the 4 weeks.
Yeah, thank you. And also, just to let you know, we'll be starting school holidays. And my wife and I will be on annual leave for the next 2 weeks. So Pastor Nick will be available if you need him. Yep. And also Pastor Jess will be on annual leave for 2 weeks. So if you need anything, if you're in hospital, if there's any emergency, please contact Pastor Nick throughout that time. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God bless.
Good morning, church family. We're so glad that you're here to worship with us this morning. I just want to encourage you to sing wherever you are, whether it's at home with family, still in bed, or if you're out at someone else's house. It's so important that we keep singing together and we keep praising God. That's our response to what He's done for us. So let's sing this song together. In the darkness we will wait, without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word, from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. Praise the Son, praise the Spirit. that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death, and the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored, and the Church of Christ was born. Then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of all shall not kneel, shall not faint. By His blood and in His name,
It's now time for our offering. So if you just press the link in the chat or go to e-giving, this week's offering goes towards our general church budget, which is for all things to do with ministries and production, especially our online services, as well as going towards the youth pastor budget, which helps us fund Jess to be able to connect with our youth. So please be as generous as you can and give what you are able to.
Good morning, church. It's Rochelle here and Zeke, and today we are doing the children's story. So if all the children can sit down in front of the TV, that would be great. So today our children's lesson is about fear, and I'm going to start with a little example of how when we have fear, God can help us overcome. Yes, we're going to watch this now. So this glass jar here represents us and our bodies, and this baking soda represents fear. So fear is a natural part of life. Everyone feels scared from time to time, especially at the moment. Some people can feel a little bit of fear and anxiety with everything going on. So when we feel fear, it kind of consumes us and it lives inside our bodies. And it's something that's very hard to get over on your own. So we'll fill our bodies up with fear. And then next I have some vinegar. So vinegar represents God. So when we have fear, it just sits inside us and it's stagnant, it's not going anywhere. But when we introduce God, you'll see what happens. So when we introduce God into the picture, whoa, he helps us to overcome our fear. He helps it to go away, gives us the strength and the courage to move forward from it. And so in the Bible, there's actually a story that really, that I really like, that kind of, I think, goes along with this lesson. Yep, there we go. So it's actually one of my favourite Bible stories, and it's about facing our fears, and it's the Bible story of Esther. So the story begins by the king of Persia dethroning his wife and searching for another wife. Esther comes forward and the king thinks she's very pretty and chooses her to be his new wife. There is a bad man named Haman who is one of the king's closest advisors, and he's a very bad man. He makes some very bad choices and decisions, and he influences the king in a really bad way. Haman tricks the king into ordering that all the Jews be killed. Esther, who is a Jew, it's okay. Esther, who is a Jew, would have remained safe if she kept her mouth shut, but because she's the king's wife, but she would have lost all her people, including her father and her closest friends and family. She chose to risk her life to speak to the king, and because of her bravery, all her people were saved. With God's help, she conquered her fears and was able to help her people. So next time you're feeling afraid, remember the soda fizzing over with the vinegar and that God can help you overcome any fear. Happy Sabbath. Hope everyone has a good week.
Precious blood has left me forgiven, pure like the whitest of snow, powerful to make sin and shame retreat. This covenant is making me whole, so I will rise and lift my head, for by his mercy my life was spared. The highest name has set me free. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean. Purify my heart in your presence. Teach me to discover the joy of holiness that forms as you draw me close. In you what was lost is restored. So I will rise and lift my head, for by his mercy my life was spared. The highest name has set me free. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean. So I will rise and lift my head, for by his mercy my life was spared. The highest name has set me free. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean. Because of Jesus, my heart is clean.
Hi everyone, it's great to see you through a camera. Well, it's about as near as we can get anyway at this point. So thank you for tuning in for another Sabbath. So, physical evidence for a God who is worth knowing. So, I trained as a scientist, I work in IT, I spend most of my spare time playing around with AV gear in a service capacity. Thing is though, how did I end up here? How did I get here? What made me so utterly convinced that God exists and would be willing to spend my life serving him and doing my best to lead others to him? The other question is, what brought me back into Christianity after you could call it the escapades of my youth? The answer is science and engineering and the awesome creation that surrounds us, from the very large to the very small. Looking at what we have learned from science, all creation declares the glory of God and points to his handiwork in everything. From the very small and very complex to the absolutely unfathomably large and complex. Nothing in creation is simple. So that then leads to a few other questions, like, who is this God who created everything? Is he worth knowing? And why did he do what the Bible says that he did? But to start off with, let's take a look at the evidence for God that's out there. And we'll reference it according to what science is discovering. Science today is very, very secular, and it has been for the last couple of 100 years. It didn't used to be, but it is largely now. And it's as a result of a scientific method that only gives credence to what we can see. So it's observe, test, repeat. Observe, test, repeat. And that's how science progresses. But sometimes in this cycle, we observe things that we simply can't explain with our existing theories. Sometimes we see things that are so complex as to be impossible to come up with a solution other than a divine creator. So I'm going to touch on a couple of those. The first is molecular biology. So it's basically the makeup, the chemistry bit of how life functions. So, did you know that the longest word in the English language, if you can call it a word, it's more like a book, is the chemistry name for a protein. So that protein is called tintin, and it's in our muscles. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. If I did, it would take me roughly 3.5 hours. So it's got just shy of 200,000 characters in it, and the the molecule itself has got 30,000 amino acids in it and over 244 discrete sections, and a molecular mass of just over 3.8 million, aka it's huge. Now, while it's huge though, by protein standards it's not overly complicated. It's big, but it's not overly complex. So, some of the most common processes in our cells are driven by extremely complex systems that have multiple bits. So one of the most common is the process by which our cells break down glucose with oxygen in order to make carbon dioxide and water, which kind of drives our systems because we get the oxygen from breathing, we get the glucose from the food we eat, helps keep our bodies working. So in order to actually use this energy though, we break the glucose down and our cells put the energy into a molecule called ATP. Now, this is basically the energy storage and currency of our cells. It's what drives all of the various processes. And this molecule needs to be recycled, because otherwise our bodies don't make enough of this stuff, so we have to keep recycling it. Your body recycles roughly its own weight in this stuff every day. The enzyme that does this is a little bit weird, to say the least. It does something that's possibly the hardest thing to do in chemistry, which is using physical pressure to drive a chemical reaction in an environment where there's a bunch of other stuff. And that bunch of other stuff tends to result in things happening that you don't want to happen. So technically it uses a concentration gradient. The simplified model of this enzyme is it looks like a water wheel. It looks remarkably similar to a turbine and generator setup that you would see in a power station. It physically changes shape in order to join the two bits of the molecule back together. And to top it all off, it's only capable of spinning in one direction. It's an absolute masterpiece of design that is essentially a miniature rotating turbine and generator setup that's a couple of hundred atoms long. And this enzyme exists in pretty well every cell that exists. And in human cells, in particular the ones that are busier, like brain cells and things like that, there's often thousands of them. So let's go on to the next thing that is overly complicated about life. So the absolute masterpiece in terms of complexity is, without a doubt, the human brain. It's possibly the most complex structure in the universe. So your brain is composed of about 100 billion neurons. The estimates are anywhere between 80 and 100 billion. Where things start to get really complicated is that every neuron is connected, on average, to about 10,000 others. And each of those connections is what your brain uses to process and store information. The estimate, and keep in mind this is an estimate and it changes regularly, for human brain capacity is roughly 2.5 petabytes. Now, to put that into perspective, that's about 5,000 laptops, or roughly about 4 racks worth of hardware in a computer data center. Now, in terms of processing power for a human brain, there's a brain simulation called Spinnaker, which they've been working with over in Europe. And it was recently upgraded 18 months ago to have 1 million processors in it. It's capable of simulating roughly 1% of our brains at any given point. This computer that's doing this draws about 100 kilowatts, so roughly the power output of a medium-sized car, in order to simulate 1% of what our brain is capable of. So there's lots of things that we don't know about how our brain works. We struggle with working out how it stores data, we struggle with working out how it processes data. But one thing that is definitely clear is that our brains know our bodies really, really well. Have you ever thought about how many muscles your brain has to instruct in order for you to raise your arm and close your hand and then open it again? Another example is our eyes. So because of the way our eyes hook into our heads, we have a blind spot in the middle of our vision. So our eyes just don't detect light that falls there. Our brains not only know about this, they actively compensate for it. So your brain overlays the two images from your eyes and uses the data from one to fill in the gaps in the other. In the event that you have one eye shut, so that information isn't available, your brain makes up stuff in order to fill in that gap. It takes data from around it and fills it in with the color that it thinks is supposed to be there, so that you don't see black spots in your vision when you close one of your eyes. Our brains are roughly 2% of our body mass, and they use 20% of our body's total energy budget. And what's even weirder is that thinking harder doesn't seem to change it. Your brain uses about the same amount of energy whether you're sitting still asleep or whether you're thinking really hard. I think it's safe to say that the most extraordinary thing in the universe is inside your head. Looking at what we've learned from science, all creation declares the glory of God, from the very small to the unfathomably large. The Bible states in Genesis 1:31, in the second half of the verse, God saw that it was good when he finished making everything. God has created the most complex object in the known universe to do one thing: to experience love and for him to be able to share the love that he has with something else. He put so much time into designing you, every part of you, your cells, your body and your brain, so that you can love him back. But love can't be forced. So he gave our brains the freedom of choice. The Bible also states in Romans 8:5, "Thus we were still sinners, Christ died for us." We used our brains and we made the wrong choice. God didn't force us to love him, and we chose not to. So this almighty, all-knowing, all-creating God chose to die for his creation, who had chosen to reject and walk away from him just so that he could be in relationship with us again. Now that's a God worth knowing.
I've been goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Hi church, thank you for joining us today. Thank you Sarah and team for the praise and worship, and thank you Paul for your sermon. We look forward to hearing next week Calvin Davis preach. And just a quick reminder that Pastor Pablo and Pastor Jess will be away on their annual 2-week leave. Have a great week.